when Melania Trump lobbed a loaded insult at Representative Jasmine Crockett. No one expected what came next. But 8 words, calm, cutting, and crystal clear, set both the room and the internet ablaze. That the atmosphere at the Bipartisan Economic Reform Forum wasn't tensy. It was cold, curated, the kind of hush that settles over a room where everyone is trying too hard to be civil. The Walter E. Washington Convention Center buzzed with suits, media badges, policy wonks, and the soft hum of cameras. You could hear pens clicking and screens scrolling. Everything was going according to plan. Until Jasmine Crockett took the mic. No flash, no theatrics. Just a navy blue dress, a steady voice, and a message that landed like a quiet hammer. This isn't just about numbers. This is about choices that prioritize profit over people, that leave families scrambling while billionaires buy their third beach house. Heads turned. Eyebrows raised. Not everyone agreed, but no one was tuning out. Jasmine wasn't reciting talking points. She was speaking like someone who'd lived the fallout of policy, not just read it in a report. Then came the interruption. Melania Trump, seated 3 chairs down in a pristine cream suit, leaned toward her mic. Her voice was low, deliberate, blade wrapped in silk. "Maybe if you stopped acting like a welfare queen," she said, pausing to adjust her earring, "you wouldn't have to go back to food stamps." For a heartbeat, the room froze. Some thought they'd misheard. A man in the second row mouthed, "Did she just say that?" Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She let the words hang there, let the room sit in its own discomfort, before she leaned forward and said, evenly, "I feed families. Your friends just feed banks." 8 words, no raise in volume, no insult in return, just precision and impact. The silence cracked. A woman near the back clapped once, hard, then another, then a wave 10, 20, and then the whole room erupted. Even the Republican aides stopped typing. Even the panelists shifted in their seats, unsure whether to look at Melania or the truth that had just landed in the middle of the floor. Melania's expression faltered. Her lips drew tight. Someone beside her whispered, probably urging her not to respond. But Jasmine wasn't finished. "You want to talk about food stamps?" she said, voice steady. "Let's talk about the single mothers in Missouri working 2 jobs who still can't afford groceries. Let's talk about how corporations got bailouts during COVID while kids were waiting in line for free lunch programs." No theatrics, no yelling. Just fact after fact, fired like quiet arrows. "You see a woman struggling and assume failure," she said. "I see her, and I see strength, resilience. That's the difference between us." This time, the applause didn't stop. It swelled, filling the space, lifting the moment beyond politics into something raw and real. Melania stayed still. Didn't reach for her mic again. The moderators glanced at one another, unsure how to regain control. But the forum had shifted. It wasn't sterile anymore. It was electric. Real reporters were already texting their editors. One aide slipped out, likely to alert senior staff. A young man with a tablet began queuing up live stream clips. The viral engine had been ignited, and Jasmine, she didn't gloat, didn't grin. She simply paused, sipped water, and let the moment breathe. Because this wasn't about revenge, it was about reality. Jasmine Crockett had just claimed the room, not by overpowering it, but by grounding it in truth. Melania adjusted her posture, but said nothing. And those 8 words, "I feed families. Your friends just feed banks," reverberated like thunder in a city built on whispers. They didn't need to be repeated. The internet would do that on its own. But in that room, in real time, something rare happened. A congresswoman from Texas dismantled a former First Lady, not with fury, but with facts. Not with volume, but with vision. And everyone felt it. Jasmine's fingers tapped the table once, a nervous tick. Maybe the only sign she'd registered the insult. But her composure never cracked. A moderator finally cleared his throat. "Let's try to remain respectful," he offered weakly. "We'd like to steer the discussion back toward structural equity." Jasmine leaned back into her mic voice, low but unshakable. "No, we're not going to skip past that." And in that moment, no one dared to. Because this was exactly the conversation America needed to hear. Melania Trump looked visibly irritated now. She hadn't expected pushback. Not here. Not from someone she hadn't even thought worth taking seriously. She shifted slightly. In her chair, angling her body toward Jasmine. One brow arched, the kind of expression that said, "Go on." Then, and Jasmine did. "I didn't grow up with security details or prep schools," she began, voice steady. "I grew up watching my mama stretch a grocery budget just so we wouldn't go to bed hungry. I watched her cut her medication doses in half so we could stay in school." She paused. The room held its breath. That wasn't laziness. That was sacrifice. Another pause. "Then what some folks call handouts," she said, "we call holding on. Holding on to hope. Holding on to each other." That silence returned, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was reverent. It's like a wave pulling back before crashing. People weren't watching a policy debate anymore. They were watching someone speak for a part of America that rarely gets the mic and never gets heard. A Republican panelist from Indiana, Lard Briggs, leaned forward slightly. Lips pressed together like he wanted to respond, but he didn't. He couldn't. He just stayed quiet. Because Jasmine wasn't angry. That's what made it powerful. She wasn't trying to win. She was reclaiming something. "You don't have to like me," she said, eyes scanning the audience. "You don't even have to agree with me. But don't you dare stand on a stage like this and call a struggling woman a welfare queen. Not while banks get tax breaks for laying people off. Not while lobbyists get rich off our suffering." A soft hum escaped from somewhere in the back row. A quiet agreement. A ripple of truth. Melania finally reached for her mic again. Her voice was clipped. Cold. "I think we should keep this conversation productive," she said. "There's no need for emotional theatrics." Jasmine tilted her head slightly. "Oh, we're productive now," she replied. "When we talk about tax cuts for billionaires, it's productive. But when we talk about feeding children, it's theatrics." She paused. No one answered. "Let's talk productivity." Then, she continued. "I've watched women raise kids, work overtime, go back to school and still get called lazy. Meanwhile, the wealthiest people in this country hide their money in offshore accounts and call it smart business." She leaned in just slightly. "One of those is survival. The other is theft." By now, the applause wasn't just enthusiastic. It was thunderous. Clapping that dared anyone to disagree. Melania didn't respond. Couldn't. She sat back, face composed but taut. Her brand elegance, aloofness, had just met resistance. And it was losing. Across the stage, Jasmine folded her hands. Calm, composed. The kind of stillness that comes not from defeat, but from certainty. Outside the hall, the internet was already choosing sides. And it wasn't choosing Mel and I technically. The forum continued. But no one cared about infrastructure anymore. The focus had shifted completely to Jasmine Crockett. The moderators tried to move on, pivoting to transportation equity, but even the C-SPAN camera crew adjusted their angles, centering Jasmine in the frame. In the media section, producers whispered through headsets. Reporters passed scribbled notes. Staffers pretended to check their phones while stealing glances at the stage. Something had cracked open. And there was no putting it back together. Meanwhile, Melania sat frozen. Her hand rested on a stack of typed talking points she hadn't touched since her first remark detonated the conversation. She glanced at them once, then said nothing. Her earpiece buzzed someone backstage, trying to coach her out of the wreckage. It didn't help. Jasmine had gone quiet, for now. But it wasn't retreat. It was command. Her words were still doing the work. Across the room, a reporter from the Baltimore Sun slipped out mid-panel, phone to his ear. An NPR correspondent followed. Seconds later, this wasn't a discussion anymore. It was a national moment. Everyone wanted to be the first to frame it in the hallway. A staffer for Representative Gwen Harney of Colorado paced furiously, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, she whispered. She said it. No, not Crockett. Melania, ya welfare queen. Food. Stamps. A pause. Crockett clapped back 8 words. A damn room exploded. Back inside, the first ripple hit the timeline. A tweet from Political Live. I feed families. Your friends just feed banks. Representative Jasmine Crockett, seconds after being insulted by Melania Trump at today's economic forum. Retweets flooded in. The hashtag feed families started trending. Within minutes, black and white edits followed. Captioned clips. Side-by-side reaction shots. Melania's face. Jasmine's fire. But in the room, Jasmine stayed still. Focus. Moderator Gerald Monroe made one last attempt at control. Congresswoman. If we could, Jasmine turned her head slightly, her expression unreadable. I think we're still on topic, she said. I didn't change the subject. I just refused to stay silent about it. And with that, she silenced every room she wasn't even in yet. The crowd erupted again, this time, louder, unfiltered. Applause rolled through the room like thunder, no longer polite but purposeful. Melania shifted in her seat. She wasn't used to being on the defensive. Her public image, crafted from years of designer stoicism and quiet elegance, had just cracked. Now, under the glare of bright lights and sharper words, she looked exposed. Vulnerable, in the worst way. Cornered, a nearby mic, still hot, picked up a murmur. It wasn't fully audible, not yet, but someone would clean the audio later. Slow. It down frame by frame. Even now, a few in the room heard it. She's so aggressive. Jasmine either heard it too, or simply knew it would come. Her expression didn't shift. Instead, she let the silence stretch, let it thicken into discomfort before slicing through it cleanly. You know what's funny? She asked, voice calm but cutting. When women raise their voices to demand respect, we're called aggressive. When men do it, they're called strong leaders. She turned slightly, her gaze brushing over Melania without lingering. You get to sit on these panels and pass judgment without ever having to explain how you got here. But I have to justify every breath I take in this space. The murmurs that followed weren't gasps. They were nods. Agreement then came. A voice that no one expected. Senator Carlton Reeves, an independent from Maine who had stayed silent most of the panel, leaned into his mic. I don't agree with everything Representative Crockett says, he began. But I think she's reminding us why we're even here. Because if this forum doesn't speak to the people who need the most help, then who exactly are we helping? That landed hard. Even Melania blinked, as if the comment had cut through her posture and reached something real. The power in the room had shifted. And outside, the media storm was now a downpour. Headlines were already climbing the trending charts. Jasmine Crockett silences Melania Trump in viral exchange from welfare. Queen 2 working-class warrior clips hit YouTube within the hour. Teenagers on TikTok lip-synced Jasmine's lines. Creators stitched commentary about poverty, inequality, and public shame. But Jasmine stayed still. Composed, she wasn't done. Just as the room caught its breath, she pivoted. No raise in volume. No theatrical change in posture, just a new current in her voice. She was taking it somewhere deeper. You want to know who taught me how to stretch one bag of groceries into a week of meals? She asked. It wasn't some economics professor. It was my mom in a hot kitchen in Beaumont, Texas. A pause. A scan of the room. She wasn't talking to Melania anymore. She was talking to every person who had ever been spoken over or shamed for surviving. She used to take 2 potatoes, half an onion, and a pack of neck bones and make it taste like Sunday dinner. We weren't rich, but she made it feel like we mattered. A few heads nodded. Some didn't move at all, but their faces showed everything. She cleaned houses for women who wore pearls while she scrubbed their toilets. Jasmine continued. And they still looked down on her like she was the one who failed. She locked eyes with the front row young aides, stiff interns. You think food stamps make people comfortable? Try handing your EBT card to a cashier while someone behind you sighs loud enough for the whole store to hear. Melania shifted again, opening her mouth like she might respond, but she didn't. There was nothing she could say now that wouldn't sound rehearsed. Or worse, hollow, Jasmine went on, her voice steady. I didn't just survive that tie built from it. I worked 2 jobs through college. I studied on the floor of a bus station when the library closed, and the whole way there were folks like you telling me I should be grateful for scraps. Now the room was still. So still, you could hear the tension in the breath people were holding. This system is built to shame anyone. It doesn't come from money. You call it pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, but some of us weren't even given boots. We just kept walking anyway. A single clap broke the stillness. Then another. Then the whole room followed, not with noise, but with weight. Applause that meant, we see it now. Jasmine softened not her message, but her delivery. This is bigger than me, she said. This is about the mom in Little Rock who hides the eviction notice from her kids. About the dad in Toledo driving Uber after his warehouse job just to make rent. About the people we pretend don't exist because their truth makes us uncomfortable. She turned back toward Melania, not with venom, with clarity. You called me a welfare queen. That wasn't a slip, was a belief, a stereotype. One meant to keep people like me small. She leaned forward slightly. But let me tell you something. Mrs. Trump, I've never taken from this country. I've given to it my time, my work, my voice. She folded her hands. And I'll keep giving long after this stage is cleared. Melania's face remained unreadable. Her eyes stayed locked on Jasmine, but her expression didn't flicker. It was the stillness of someone who realized she'd lost the room and didn't know how to get it back. Across the panel, a woman from the Brookings Institution leaned in and spoke for the first time. Congresswoman Crockett, she said, thank you. That's the most honest statement we've heard on this stage today. A ripple of verbal agreement moved across the table. Jasmine didn't nod. She didn't thank her. She simply leaned back and picked up her water glass. That quiet gesture didn't end the conversation, it redirected it, because the truth had just walked through the front door, uninvited, and taken the seat at the head of the table. While Jasmine had already won over the room, the internet was only beginning to light the match, and the firestorm would spread far beyond Washington. Melania Trump had always known how to pose for a camera, even in silence. She understood angles, stillness, and how to project detachment that looked like elegance. But none of that could save her now. She hadn't expected Jasmine to push back, and certainly not like this. No shouting, no theatrics. Just a steady stream of unapologetic truth, and that's what made it dangerous. For the first time since the forum began, Melania looked unsure. Not dramatically so, but just enough. Her posture tightened. A twitch of her hand near the mic. She didn't speak. She couldn't. There was no PR playbook for this moment. and the room knew it. To the left of the stage, two women in business suits whispered behind their hands. One, an economist from San Diego, glanced at Melania and frowned. A man in a gray blazer, former Reagan staffer, shook his head and looked down at his notes. The backlash hadn't fully landed yet, but it was coming. Then came Melania's mistake, trying. To recover, she leaned into the microphone and cleared her throat. "I want to clarify something," she said, her tone clipped. "When I said what I said, it was taken out of context. I didn't mean it as a personal attack." But silence didn't work for her this time. The tension in the room thick and not hostile, just tired. Jasmine raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. The crowd did it for her. Scoffs from the back rows. A pressed photographer muttered, "Too late." Still, Melania pressed on. "What I meant," she continued, "is that dependency on government shouldn't be celebrated. We should encourage independence, self-reliance, hard work." Jasmine leaned forward, her voice calm and cutting. "And what do you think I've been doing my whole life?" she asked. "You think my story is about dependency? Then you missed the entire point." Melania blinked. Jasmine didn't stop. Hard work is standing in line at 6 a.m. for a bus that might not come. Hard work is raising 3 kids while studying for your nursing exam at night. Hard work is calling 5 different pharmacies because your insurance keeps saying no. That's what people are doing every single day. So don't stand on this stage and pretend they're looking for handouts. The words hit hard. Melania's argument crumbled in real time. Her attempt at clarification only made it clearer how far removed she was from the world Jasmine had just painted, one that felt grounded, lived in. Real now. The audience wasn't just clapping. They were with Jasmine. Reporters were already rewriting their angles. MSNBC, CNN, even the Wall Street Journal had sent out alerts. Conservative outlets scrambled to spin it. Crockett loses cool at Forum, but there was no clip to support that Jasmine hadn't lost her cool. That was the problem. She had been surgical. Meanwhile, Melania's team was in panic mode. A publicist was texting furiously. An aide in a black headset was already drafting a statement. Damage control had started, but it was too late. By the time Melania finally went silent again, the panel had moved on. No one was directing questions her way anymore. Her name stopped being mentioned. Jasmine, on the other hand, was now the center of gravity. One moderator turned to her. "Congresswoman, what does meaningful economic reform look like to you, practically speaking?" Jasmine didn't miss a beat. "Start by asking the people closest to the problem," she said. "Not the billionaires. Not the folks writing op-eds from glass offices. Ask the single parents. Ask the veterans working minimum wage. Ask the teachers spending their own paychecks on school supplies." She said it plainly. She didn't need to raise her voice. The power wasn't in the volume. It came from clarity, from words that mirrored a reality millions endure. But few dare to say out loud. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. One woman had lived it. The other had labeled it. And while Melania Trump was quietly fading from the panel, Jasmine Crockett's words were gaining momentum online and everywhere else. By 2:43 p.m., an unedited 18-second clip hit X. No music, no filters. Just raw footage of Jasmine's calm voice delivering what would become the quote of the day. "I feed families. Your friends just feed banks." Within minutes, it exploded. By 2:58, it had already been viewed over 400,000 times. By 3:20, it topped Reddit's political feed. At 3:47, the Daily Beast dropped the headline, "Jasmine Crockett body slams Melania Trump with 8-word masterclass." By rush hour, she was trending in 42 states. Comments poured in like wildfire. She didn't flinch. She didn't stutter. She said what needed saying. Melania picked the wrong one today. No screaming, no shade, just truth. Clips were everywhere. TikToks synced Jasmine's voice to booming soundtracks. College students filmed duets. Teachers, nurses, and activists all echoed the same sentiment. Finally, someone said it. And Jasmine. She wasn't even. Online. Backstage, she sat on a folding chair, quietly scrolling through a few texts from her staff. Her navy blue dress unchanged. The same earrings in place, yet the world outside that room had shifted entirely. Cable news. Anchors began referencing her line, "Live No," waiting for press releases. Even Fox News split their coverage. Some defended Melania's intent. Others admitted the backlash was real and growing. In CNN's green room, political strategist Theo Briggs watched the clip for the 6th time. "She never raised her voice," he said to an intern. "That's what made it land. It wasn't performative. It was personal." By early evening, Jasmine's line made it into the White House press briefing. A reporter asked whether the president agreed. Nervous laughter followed. The press secretary dodged. But the message was clear. This wasn't going away. Then came the think pieces. Crockett's mic moment wasn't just viral, it was historic. Why one congresswoman's clapback should be required listening on Capitol Hill. Melania. Trump repeats a tired trope. Jasmine Crockett dismantles it with grace. The commentary crossed generational, political, even international lines. The Guardian translated it. Le Monde posted it. A Guinean blogger shared the clip with the caption, "American politics just got a dose of truth serum." But it wasn't just media, it was the people. A school counselor in Memphis posted a tearful video thanking Jasmine. A father of 4 in Oklahoma wrote, "I've been ashamed to admit I needed help. Not anymore. She made me feel seen." An ER nurse in Albuquerque put it plainly. She didn't just speak for poor people, she spoke for working people. There's a difference. Back in the green room, Jasmine finally watched the clip. Her aide, Brianna, held out her phone. "You need to see this." Jasmine watched for a moment. Her own voice echoed back. "I feed families. Your friends just feed banks." She exhaled. "I meant it," she said. Brianna nodded. "You lit the whole place up." Jasmine looked again. Notifications flooded the screen. A blur of applause and fury and attention, but she didn't smile. She knew exactly what it meant. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a turning point. And it came with weight. In the hallway, reporters waited. 2 had already staked out the exit. Ha1 held up a recorder, hoping for a soundbite. But Jasmine didn't give them one. She turned to Brianna and said quietly, "They're not clapping for me. They're clapping for what they've lived through." I just said it out loud. And still, the noise grew. Behind the curtain, the power players were already adjusting their strategies. But Jasmine hadn't strategized. She just told the truth, and the country was still catching its breath. While the public clung to every replay, every repost, and every second of Jasmine Crockett's words behind the scenes, something quieter was unfolding. The forum had ended. Chairs sat empty. Lights dimmed. Staffers moved through the aisles, collecting abandoned programs and half-finished coffee cups. But 2 floors above the main hall, in a small room away from cameras and clicks, a conversation was happening, one that would never appear on any live stream. Jasmine sat across from Senator Eli Forsyth, a 67-year-old Republican from Nebraska. Deep voice, conservative cut suit, hands that looked like they'd built fences long before they ever signed bills. He leaned forward, steady-eyed. "You shook the hell out of that room," he said. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment?" "It's a warning," he replied. "There are folks who won't like what you said, but I'm not one of them." She studied him, trying to tell if this was politics or something more real. He continued. I didn't like the way Melania handled it. That's not how we fix anything. What you said, Londa, 'cause it was true. Jasmine nodded slowly, cautious but open. Forsyth leaned back, arms folded. Thing is, a lot of people in my district don't hate the poor. They're just tired of being told they're lazy when they're one emergency away from losing everything. Her tone softened. Then maybe we've got more in common than people think. A pause followed, not tense, not awkward, just honest. Down the hall, in another room, Melania Trump sat with 2 senior aides and a press consultant. Her makeup had been retouched. Her jacket changed, but nothing could mask what had already happened. We can spin this, one aide said carefully. Focus on economic self-reliance. Void the phrase entirely. Redirect, no. Melania cut in. They won't forget it. She was right. She'd seen the headlines, the comments, the way a single truth spoken plainly could crack through a room like breaking glass. Back upstairs, Jasmine now sat with 3 Democratic lawmakers and an independent from Vermont. They weren't giving advice. They were asking questions. How did you stay so calm? What was going through your head when she said it? Did you rehearse that line, or did it just come out? Jasmine answered plainly. It came from my gut. I didn't think about how it would land. I just told the truth. Later, walking toward the elevator flanked by her staff, a woman in her 50s stopped her in the hallway. She wore a janitor's badge and smelled faintly of cleaning supplies. Congresswoman, she said gently, my sister called me crying today because of what you said. She's never cried over politics in her life. Jasmine smiled and took her hand. Tell her, I said thank you. Meanwhile, in the press bullpen, editors lined up the next morning's guests. Everyone wanted Jasmine. Morning Joe. The Breakfast Club, CBS Mornings. Even 60 Minutes was floating. A segment. One PBS producer whispered to a colleague, this wasn't just a moment. This was a realignment. While networks scrambled to book her, Jasmine sat alone in her hotel room. Her phone buzzed constantly, but she left it on the nightstand. A tray of untouched food sat beside it. She wasn't thinking about headlines, or angles, or strategy. She was thinking about her mother, about nights they shared ramen and tap water, about how her mom would whisper, we're okay, whenever the landlord knocked, even when it wasn't true. Everything Jasmine said came from that place, and while pundits treated her words like a chess move, she knew better. This wasn't about optics. It was about memory. About women who survived so their daughters could one day speak. But headlines don't wait. Neither do voters. By 6 a.m., the sun hadn't fully risen in Washington, but the story had already spread across the country. CNN, Melania's comment. Sparks national debate. Crockett responds with truth. Not fury the hill. 8 words. One shift in tone. Jasmine Crockett steals the forum. Fox News. Melania Trump faces backlash over welfare remark. Is this fair? By breakfast, it was on local news in Tulsa, Tampa, Sacramento, Des Moines. Good Morning America ran a full segment. Jasmine's voice layered over footage of food, bank lines, and single mothers with grocery carts. Some pundits tried to downplay it. She got lucky with a soundbite, said one radio guest. But the host shut that down fast. No, she got heard. That's not luck. That's clarity. Even conservative voices shifted tone. One former Bushira aide told MSNBC, and the conversation kept going, because something had cracked. And the silence Jasmine broke, it wasn't coming back. At first he said, I didn't like what she said. But then came the pause, the one that meant everything. But the more I think about it, I've never seen anyone confront that stereotype like that tanned win. Jasmine Crockett wasn't watching interviews that morning. She was still in her hotel room at the Conrad, wrapped in an oversized t-shirt, sipping a paper cup of lukewarm coffee when her aide Brianna came in holding a laptop. "You're gonna want to see this," she said, angling the screen toward Jasmine. A clip was playing from a Detroit morning show. A woman, mid-30s, sat across from the host, fighting back tears. "She didn't just speak for Congress," the woman said. "She spoke for people like me. People who've heard that welfare queen garbage for decades. I've got 3 kids. I work, I go to church, I don't steal, I don't take. I survive." The host said nothing, just let her finish. Jasmine watched in silence. She didn't smile, she didn't cry. She just said quietly, "We've been waiting too long to be seen." At 8 a.m., her team agreed to just one interview. NPR's All Things Considered. No frills, no spinach. A platform where the audience actually listens. "Were you surprised by how people responded?" the host asked. Jasmine answered plainly, "No. People are tired of being humiliated, blamed for their own struggle. All I did was say what they've been thinking for years." Then came the harder question. Do you believe Melania Trump's comment was personal or systemic? She didn't hesitate. Both. Because systemic bias doesn't need to shout, it whispers. It mutters beneath its breath into microphones. And it survives because we pretend those moments aren't serious, but they are. The interview ended. Simply, but the reaction didn't. Clips surged across social media, just of the viral moment, but of her new words. Her steady voice, her refusal to soften. She hadn't backpedaled. She had doubled down. And America noticed, by noon, 3 universities had reached out with speaking invitations. Howard, USC, and the University of Michigan. She hadn't accepted any. She wasn't chasing microphones. She was thinking about what came next at 12:36 p.m. A letter arrived at her D.C. office. No return address. No signature. Just a sheet of folded paper in a plain envelope. "You made me feel seen for the first time in years. I used to be ashamed of using WIC. Now I'm not. Thank you." Just a mom in Indiana. No name, no Twitter handle. Just a woman, finally breathing a little easier. That was the real story. Not the sound bites, not the trending hashtags. The real impact was happening in places cameras don't go in. The shift of posture. The louder voice in a staff meeting. The mother walking through the grocery line without shame. In Dallas, a high school civics teacher assigned her quote as discussion material. In Cincinnati, a church group read her words aloud before Sunday service. In San Jose, a local community board expanded their food assistance outreach because someone on the committee saw a clip on Instagram Jasmine didn't need to repeat herself. Her words were already moving on their own, but the most meaningful moment hadn't come yet. 3 days later, she kept a quiet promise. No cameras, no announcement, just a narrow community hall in Toledo, Ohio, metal chairs, lukewarm coffee, and a room full of people whose lives never get summarized in campaign speeches. It wasn't a photo op. It wasn't on her schedule. She had promised Miss Delora she'd come. And she did. A young mother stood at the front, toddler shifting in her arms. "I cried," she said. "Not because I was mad, but because I'd never heard anyone in Congress talk about women like me. Like we mattered." Jasmine nodded. "You do matter. And you shouldn't have to be lucky to be heard." In the back, a man raised his hand. Probably in his 50s, wore a delivery uniform. A thermal food bag at his feet. "I work nights. Sometimes I skip dinner so my daughter can eat before school," he said. "But people act like I'm milking the system." He wasn't asking for sympathy. He just wanted someone to hear it, And Jasmine did. She didn't redirect the conversation back to policy or numbers. She just listened. Later that afternoon, She visited a local school cafeteria, the kind that had to cancel its breakfast program because of a state budget cut. Principal Bernice Alvarez, short and direct, met her at the door. "Sometimes," she said, "it feels like we're running a triage unit, not a school." Jasmine just nodded, because she already knew. Jasmine had just finished her tour when Principal Bernice Alvarez gently pulled her aside. "I've got kids trying to focus on math with empty stomachs," she said. "Some of them won't eat again until dinner." And meanwhile, people debate. Whether hunger is political, Jasmine exhaled slowly. They treat struggle like it's shameful, like needing help makes you less worthy. Bernice nodded. "But you reminded people it doesn't." As they passed the lunchroom, a young girl with cornrows and a purple hoodie peeked around the corner. "Are you the lady from the video?" she asked. Jasmine smiled. "That depends which video. The one where you said the bank thing." The girl replied, "My grandma showed me." Jasmine crouched to her level. "Do you know why I said that?" The girl shook her head. "Because people who work hard and care for their families deserve more than just barely getting by. That includes your grandma, and that includes you." The girl nodded, giggled, and disappeared down the hall. That moment lingered with Jasmine more than the panels, more than the headlines, because it was one thing to speak from a podium, and another to be remembered by a child who had seen her grandmother cry for the first time in months. Back in Washington, the pundits were still talking. Some called it political gold. Others questioned how long it would last. Jasmine wasn't listening. That evening, she was in a modest rec center in Dayton, unpacking food boxes with pantry volunteers. No cameras, no staff. Just sleeves rolled up and quiet hands doing quiet work. One woman, Vera, lifted a box of canned beans and said, "I've been organizing drives for years. We used to beg local reps to come by. No one ever did. Until now." Jasmine helped unpack without saying much. A young volunteer named Devin glanced over. "Why do you do all this stuff after the cameras turn off?" Jasmine wiped her hands on a towel. "'Cause that's when it counts. People think power lives in Washington, but it's right here with you, with folks making sure no one goes to bed hungry." Devin nodded slowly. "You think it'll change anything?" She looked him in the eye. "It already has." "You're here asking that question, aren't you?" Outside, the sky was heavy with the smell of rain. Jasmine tilted her head back, thinking of her mother-late bills, folded laundry, borrowed strength. Everything she'd said on that stage only mattered because of these people, their hands, their stories, their survival. But her night wasn't over yet. She had one last stop, a studio taping for a late-night show, one known more for sarcasm than sincerity. The host leaned in. "When you said those 8 words, did you know they'd catch fire?" Jasmine gave a small shake of her head. "I wasn't trying to go viral. I was just speaking from a place that too many folks bury." The host's smirk faded. "You weren't just speaking to the room, you were speaking through it." Jasmine nodded. Sometimes people mistake politeness for peace. But silence doesn't always mean comfort. Sometimes it just means we're tired of explaining the same pain again and again. The audience clapped not wildly, but genuinely. "You've been called bold, loud, disruptive," the host said. "How do you feel about that?" She smiled. "They used to call my mother loud when she stood up for herself. But that voice kept the lights on. That voice made sure we ate. If being loud means someone hears the truth for the first time, I don't mind." She leaned forward, just a little. "I've learned something. People don't just want facts, they want honesty. And sometimes honesty isn't elegant. It's raw. It's uncomfortable. But that's what makes it real." Backstage, a producer mouthed, "Wow." Then came the final question. "You've sparked a conversation that's moved far beyond politics. What do you want people to take away from all this? Jasmine didn't blink. That they deserve to be seen, not pitied, not studied, seen. She continued, we're used to hiding our need. We call it pride, but sometimes it's just survival. And we've let people in power convince us that needing help is failure. It's not. It's human. Applause again deeper this time. The host nodded. One last thing. If you could say something now to the people who've called you everything from troublemaker to hero, what would you say? Jasmine looked into the camera, dramatic, just honest. I'd say, keep talking, keep showing up, keep pushing. Because when we stay quiet, the wrong people keep winning. Then she added, I just had the mic for a minute, but it's yours now. The segment ended. The studio lights dimmed, but something lingered in the air. That night, social media didn't explode, it resonated. A grandmother in Pittsburgh posted about raising 6 kids on disability. A single dad in Phoenix wrote about the shame of food stamps and the pride of never letting his daughter feel it. An ICU nurse in Birmingham tweeted, Jasmine Crockett made it okay to be honest again. Not polished, just honest. And in homes. Across the country, people felt something shift. Not because someone shouted, but because someone spoke and refused to apologize for it. Jasmine returned to her apartment just after midnight. No entourage, no spotlight. Just tired feet and a full heart. She dropped her keys, kicked off her shoes, and sat on the couch. No celebration. No speech. Just the soft sound of a letter opening. The one from Indiana. She read it again, aloud this. Time. You made me feel seen. She let the words hang in the air like a prayer. And somewhere out there, someone else was still watching that clip. Still holding their breath. Still feeling maybe for the first time that someone in power finally understood.